The restaurant was already crowded long before the evening rush truly began. Soft music played in the background, mixed with the sound of plates clinking and quiet conversations. People came here to relax, to forget about their long days, and to enjoy a meal that made them feel special. For the staff, though, it was just another shift that demanded patience, focus, and a smile that could not fade no matter what happened. The waitress moved carefully between tables, holding a tray with practiced balance. She had worked here for a long time, long enough to know how different customers could be. Some were kind, some were demanding, and some believed money gave them the right to treat others however they pleased. Still, she greeted everyone the same way, with a polite tone and steady calm. This job mattered to her. It paid the bills, helped her support her family, and gave her a sense of independence she was proud of. That evening, she was already tired. One coworker had called in sick, so everyone else had to work harder. Orders were coming in fast, and the kitchen was doing its best to keep up. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and walked toward a table near the center of the room. That was when the woman entered. Her arrival was impossible to miss. She wore expensive clothes, sharp heels, and a look that suggested she expected the world to move aside for her. Conversations nearby grew quieter as people noticed her confident walk and loud voice. She spoke on her phone while heading to a table, complaining about traffic and how no one seemed to respect her time. The hostess tried to greet her, but the woman brushed past without slowing down. She chose a table without waiting to be seated and dropped her bag on the chair beside her. When the waitress approached with menus, the woman barely looked up. "I hope service here is better than the parking," she said, her voice sharp. "I don't have time for mistakes." The waitress nodded politely and handed over the menu. She explained the specials and asked if the woman would like something to drink. The response was a wave of the hand and an annoyed sigh. "Just bring water. And make it quick." The waitress did exactly that. She returned moments later with water and waited patiently as the woman continued checking her phone. When she finally ordered, she spoke fast and changed her mind twice. The waitress listened carefully, repeating the order back to make sure it was correct. A few minutes later, the food was ready. The waitress placed the plate gently on the table, smiling as she did so. For a brief second, it seemed everything was fine. Then the woman frowned. "This is not what I asked for," she said loudly. The waitress was surprised. She calmly explained that it was exactly what had been ordered, even repeating the words the woman had used. That only made the situation worse. "Are you calling me a liar?" the woman snapped, raising her voice so others could hear. "Do you know who I am?" The restaurant grew quieter. Nearby diners paused mid-bite, sensing trouble. The waitress felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her tone respectful. "I'm sorry if there's been a misunderstanding," she said gently. "I can have the kitchen remake it if you like." That should have ended it. But instead, the woman stood up. "I am the girlfriend of the CEO," she announced, as if it were a title that demanded fear. "One word from me, and you won't work anywhere like this again." The waitress felt heat rush to her face. She had heard people make threats before, but this one felt different. The woman stepped closer, invading her space, her eyes full of anger. "I don't like your attitude," the woman continued. "People like you should remember your place." Before the waitress could step back, the woman reached out. It happened so fast that no one could stop it. The woman grabbed the front of the waitress's uniform, pulling hard. There was a sharp sound as fabric tore. Gasps filled the room. The waitress froze. She looked down at her torn dress, her hands shaking. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The humiliation hit her all at once, like a heavy weight pressing on her chest. Every eye in the restaurant seemed to be on her. The woman stepped back, shocked for only a second, then scoffed. "See what you made me do?" she said, as if blaming the waitress. The manager rushed over, his face pale. He asked what was going on, trying to calm the situation. The woman immediately started speaking over him, telling her version of the story, making herself sound like the victim. The waitress said nothing. She pulled her apron closer, trying to cover the tear. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry there. in front of everyone. She quietly asked if she could step away to fix her uniform. The manager nodded, clearly overwhelmed. As she walked toward the staff area, whispers followed her. Some customers looked angry, others uncomfortable. A few looked sympathetic. The waitress focused on taking one step at a time. Inside, her heart was racing, not just from embarrassment, but from something deeper. She felt hurt, but also strangely calm. She knew she had done nothing wrong. In the staff room, she leaned against the wall and took a long breath. Her hands trembled as she tried to adjust the torn fabric. She thought about leaving, about walking out and never coming back. But she didn't. She reminded herself why she worked so hard, why she had endured so much. Outside, the woman continued to sit proudly at her table, unaware that her actions were about to set something much bigger in motion. She believed her power would protect her, that her words and status placed her above consequences. The waitress straightened her shoulders. She wiped her face, fixed her uniform as best she could, and prepared to step back out. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything. And the evening was far from over. The staff room felt smaller than usual. The air was quiet, broken only by distant sounds from the dining area. The waitress stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her uniform as best she could. The tear was still visible, no matter how carefully she tried to hide it. She sighed softly, knowing she had no spare dress to change into. Calling it a bad day felt too small for what she was feeling. She replayed the moment in her head again and again. The sudden anger, the grip on her clothes, the sound of fabric ripping. What hurt the most was not the torn dress, but the way it happened in front of so many people, as if her dignity meant nothing. Still, she refused to let it break her. She had faced harder moments in life than this. After a few minutes, the manager knocked gently and asked if she was okay. She nodded and told him she could return to work. He hesitated, clearly unsure what to do next. The woman in the dining area was still upset, still loud, and still demanding special treatment. The manager apologized quietly and said he would handle it. The waitress thanked him and stepped back into the restaurant. The atmosphere had changed. Conversations were softer now. People glanced toward the table where the woman sat, then looked away. The woman was talking on her phone again, her voice full of confidence, as if nothing serious had happened. "I don't care what anyone says," she said loudly. "They should be grateful I even come here." The waitress kept her head down and focused on another table. A couple nearby gave her a kind look and quietly asked if she was all right. She smiled politely and said she was fine. That small moment of kindness meant more to her than they would ever know. Meanwhile, the woman waved her hand sharply, calling the manager over again. She complained about the food, the service, the lighting, even the music. She demanded free items and hinted once more at her powerful connection. "You know who my partner is," she said with a smirk. "This place depends on people like us." The manager nodded nervously, trying to keep the peace. Other staff members watched from a distance, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. Everyone felt the tension. The waitress continued working, but inside, her thoughts were heavy. She wondered how someone could treat another person that way and feel no shame. She reminded herself that anger often came from insecurity, not strength. That thought helped her breathe a little easier. As time passed, more customers arrived. Orders increased. The kitchen stayed busy. Life in the restaurant went on, even though something ugly had happened just moments before. The waitress served food, cleared tables, and kept moving, choosing professionalism over emotion. At one point, she passed by the woman's table again. Their eyes met briefly. The woman looked away first, then rolled her eyes. "Make sure you don't mess up this time," she muttered. The waitress said nothing. Silence felt stronger than any argument. Behind the scenes, whispers spread among the staff. Some were angry about what they had witnessed. Others worried about their jobs if the situation escalated. A few wondered whether the woman's claims were even true. No one knew for sure. What none of them knew was that events outside the restaurant were already shifting. A meeting had ended earlier than planned. A familiar car was pulling into the parking lot. A decision to stop by for dinner, made on a quiet impulse, was about to change the night completely. Inside the restaurant, the woman leaned back in her chair, confident and relaxed. She believed she had won. She believed her name, her status, and her relationship protected her from consequences. She laughed softly at something on her phone, unaware of how fragile her position really was. The waitress finished delivering an order and paused near the counter. She took a deep breath and looked around the room. Despite everything, she felt proud of herself. She had stayed calm. She had not lowered herself to cruelty. Whatever happened next, she knew she had done the right thing. The door to the restaurant opened, letting in a brief rush of cooler air. A few heads turned, then turned back. No one paid much attention at first. The moment passed quietly, like any other entrance. But something in the air shifted. The waitress felt it before she saw it. A strange sense of anticipation, like the calm before a storm. She glanced toward the entrance, then returned to her duties. She had no idea that the person who had just walked in would soon force the truth into the open. The woman continued to sit comfortably, finishing her drink, completely unaware that her confidence was about to be tested in ways she could not imagine. The night was still young, and the consequences of earlier actions were slowly catching up. The story was far from finished. The door closed softly behind the person who had just entered, but the effect of that entrance slowly began to ripple through the restaurant. The manager noticed first. He straightened his posture and took a careful look toward the front. His expression changed, not with fear, but with alert respect. He adjusted his jacket and quietly told a nearby staff member to cover the counter for a moment. The waitress was refilling glasses at a table near the window. She felt eyes shifting, bodies turning slightly. The room seemed to grow quieter without anyone saying a word. She glanced up and saw a man standing near the entrance. He was dressed simply, not flashy, but carried himself with calm confidence. He did not look rushed or angry. He looked observant. He took a few steps inside, letting his eyes move naturally around the room. He noticed the staff working hard, the customers eating, and then he noticed something else. His gaze paused on the waitress, not in a judging way but in a concerned one. He noticed the tear in her uniform and the way she held herself, careful and guarded. The manager approached him and spoke quietly. They exchanged a few words. The manager nodded several times, his face serious. The man listened closely, then looked again toward the center table where the woman sat. The woman did not notice him at first. She was laughing at her phone, clearly enjoying her own sense of importance. She called for another drink without even looking up. When no one came immediately, she tapped her glass impatiently. The man walked toward her table at a steady pace. A few customers recognized him and whispered to one another. Others sensed that something important was about to happen. "Good evening," the man said calmly. The woman looked up, ready to complain, then froze. Her smile faded. For a split second, her confidence cracked. "Oh," she said, forcing a laugh. "You're here already?" "Yes," he replied. "I decided to stop by." The waitress watched from a distance, her heart beating faster. She didn't know why, but she felt that this moment mattered. The man glanced at the torn uniform again, then back at the woman. His voice remained calm. "I was told there was an incident," he said. "I'd like to understand what happened." The woman immediately began talking, her words rushed and defensive. She blamed poor service, disrespect, and mistakes. She spoke as if everyone around her was beneath her. She expected agreement, but the man did not interrupt. He simply listened. When she finished, he turned his attention to the manager and then to the staff. He asked gently if anyone else had seen what happened. There was a brief pause. Silence filled the room. Then one customer spoke up. Then another. Quiet voices shared the truth. The waitress felt her throat tighten as she realized people were standing up for her. The man nodded slowly, absorbing every word. He turned back to the woman. "Is that accurate?" he asked. The woman hesitated. Her eyes darted around the room. For the first time that night, she looked unsure. "It was an accident," she said weakly. "She provoked me." The man shook his head slightly. "No one deserves to be treated that way," he said. "Not here. Not anywhere." He then turned toward the waitress and asked her to come closer. She hesitated, then stepped forward. The room was completely silent now. "I'm sorry you experienced this," he said to her. "Thank you for handling yourself with professionalism." Her eyes filled with emotion, but she nodded. That simple acknowledgement felt powerful. The man addressed the room. "I want to be clear," he said. "Respect is not optional here. It does not depend on who you know." The woman's face flushed. She stood up abruptly, trying to regain control. "You can't be serious," she said. "You know who I am to you." The man looked at her steadily. "And I now know who you are to others," he replied. The weight of his words settled heavily. The manager was instructed to bring the security footage. The screen near the counter showed exactly what had happened. There was no denying it. The woman's voice softened. She tried to apologize, but it came too late. The man turned back to the waitress once more. "You did nothing wrong," he said, "and you will not be punished for someone else's behavior." He then addressed the staff and customers again, offering a sincere apology for what they had witnessed. The woman sat back down slowly, stunned. Her confidence had vanished. The waitress returned to her duties, but everything felt different now. She walked with a lighter step. She knew the truth had finally come out. The night was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted, and everyone in the room could feel it. The restaurant did not return to normal right away. Even though people went back to eating and talking, there was a feeling in the air that something important had happened. The woman remained seated for a while, staring at the table, her phone forgotten beside her. The confidence she had carried earlier was gone. In its place was confusion, embarrassment, and fear. The man spoke quietly with the manager again. Their conversation was serious but calm. No voices were raised. No scene was made. That alone said a lot. Power did not need to shout. The waitress continued working, but now people looked at her differently. Not with pity, but with respect. Some customers smiled at her as she passed. A few thanked her for her service. One person quietly told her she had handled everything with grace. She nodded politely each time, still processing everything that had happened. The man asked the manager to give the waitress a short break. When she was told, she hesitated, worried she was causing trouble. The manager assured her it was fine. She stepped into a quiet corner near the back, her hands still shaking slightly. A few moments later, the man approached her there. Not as a powerful figure, but as a person. "I want to apologize again," he said. "No one should feel unsafe or humiliated at work." She thanked him softly. She did not know what else to say. Words felt small compared to the emotions she was holding in. He asked if she was all right, if she needed to go home, if someone could cover her shift. She thought about it for a moment, then shook her head. "I'd like to finish my work," she said. "If that's okay." He nodded, clearly respecting her choice. Across the room, the woman finally stood up. Her movements were slower now. She walked toward them, her face tight, her eyes avoiding contact with anyone else. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. The man listened as she spoke, her voice trembling between apology and self-defense. She explained how stressed she had been, how it had not meant to go that far. She said she had made a mistake. He listened, but he did not soften. "Being stressed does not excuse hurting someone," he said calmly. "And using a relationship as a weapon is not acceptable." The truth landed hard. He told her that her behavior had consequences. Not dramatic ones, but real ones. He explained that respect was not something she could borrow from him. It had to come from her own actions. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she understood that this moment could not be undone. The waitress stood quietly, feeling conflicted. She did not feel joy watching someone else fall. She only felt relief that the truth had been seen. The man thanked the waitress again and returned to the main area. He addressed the staff privately, reminding them that their safety and dignity mattered. That message alone lifted a weight many of them had carried for years. The woman gathered her belongings. As she walked toward the door, people stepped aside. No one mocked her. No one applauded. The silence was enough. She paused near the exit and looked back once, regret clear on her face. Then she left. The restaurant breathed again. The waitress returned to the floor. Her uniform was still torn, but she stood taller than before. The rest of the shift passed quietly. Work continued. Life continued. Later that night, as the restaurant began to empty, the man remained. He spoke with staff, thanked them for their work, and left a generous tip for the team, not as a gesture of power, but of appreciation. When the waitress finally clocked out, exhaustion hit her all at once. But it was mixed with something else. Peace. She stepped outside into the cool night air and took a deep breath. The events of the evening replayed in her mind, but now they felt different. Less heavy. More resolved. She knew there was still more to come. Consequences did not end in one night. Lessons took time. But she also knew something important had changed. Not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed the truth. The night ended quietly, but its impact would last far longer. The days after that night passed quietly, but the impact of what happened did not fade. For the waitress, life returned to routine on the surface. She woke up early, took the bus to work, tied her apron, and stepped onto the restaurant floor with the same steady focus she always had. Yet something inside her had shifted. She no longer carried the same fear she once felt when dealing with difficult people. She had learned, in a very real way, that dignity could survive even the most public moments of shame. The restaurant felt different too. Staff members spoke more openly with one another. The manager made an effort to check in more often, not just about work, but about how people were feeling. Small changes appeared. Clear rules were shared about behavior, respect, and safety. It was not loud or dramatic, but it was meaningful. Customers continued to come and go, unaware of the full story behind the calm atmosphere. Those who had been there that night remembered. Some returned and treated the staff with extra kindness. Others simply smiled more. It was as if the space itself had learned something. The waitress noticed the change most during quiet moments. When she refilled water glasses or wiped tables, she felt lighter. She still worked hard, but she no longer felt invisible. She understood now that her value did not depend on how others treated her. It came from who she was. One afternoon, the manager asked her to step into the office. For a brief moment, old fear crept in. She pushed it aside and followed him calmly. He thanked her for her professionalism and told her how much the team appreciated her. He also shared that there would be new opportunities for growth if she wanted them. Training, more responsibility, a chance to move forward. She listened carefully, surprised. She had never asked for special treatment. She had only done her job. She left the office feeling proud, not because of praise, but because she had stayed true to herself. Elsewhere, the woman faced a very different reality. The confidence she once relied on no longer protected her. People around her saw her differently. Some stepped back. Others questioned her behavior. The attention she once enjoyed turned into uncomfortable silence. She spent long hours thinking about that night. First, she felt angry, then defensive. Eventually, regret settled in. She replayed the moment again and again, wishing she had walked away, wishing she had spoken differently, wishing she had remembered that the person in front of her was human. She realized too late that power borrowed from someone else was fragile. It vanished the moment it was tested. The lesson was painful but real. For the man, the night served as a reminder. Leadership was not just about decisions made in boardrooms. It was about everyday actions. About standing up quietly, firmly, and without fear of discomfort. He continued to visit the restaurant occasionally, not to observe, but to support. Each time he treated everyone the same way, with respect. He never spoke publicly about the incident. He did not need to. Change did not require an announcement. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. One evening, the waitress finished her shift and stepped outside as she often did, breathing in the cool air before heading home. She looked back at the restaurant lights glowing softly through the windows. For the first time, she smiled without effort. She thought about how close she had come to breaking that night. How easy it would have been to give up. How tempting it was to believe she did not matter. But she had stayed. She had stood quietly, firmly, and with self-respect. And that had changed everything. Life did not suddenly become perfect. Challenges still came. Difficult people still existed. But she now knew something important. No matter how loud someone's status seemed, it could never erase another person's worth. As she walked away, she felt stronger than before. Not because someone powerful had stepped in, but because she had discovered her own strength. The story did not end with applause or revenge. It ended with growth, accountability, and quiet justice. And sometimes that is the most powerful ending of all.